Begin transmission. Vijila here. They keep saying trans people are new, a fad, a phase. But I've been tracing the records, and they lied, and I found the proof. We've always been here. Or we were. Lately, something's been wrong. Government databases, fragmented. Public records, erased. University archives, quietly rewritten. It's like someone's going back through history and deleting us in real time. And identities, entire names, have already vanished. No trace, no explanation, no accountability. Who were they, and why were they targeted? Wait, I'm getting a signal. One moment.
Vijila, I had hoped you'd still be monitoring this frequency.
For you, Archivist Omega, always.
The purge is worse than we thought. The deletion protocols aren't random. They're targeting identities that don't conform to a government-approved gender narrative. They're not just rewriting history, they're erasing it. But I've tracked down the deletion logs. Entries are being scrubbed from public and academic databases, sometimes within hours of being uploaded. I couldn't recover the full files, but I salvaged fragments, corrupted metadata, ghosted citations, location markers that no longer resolve. And I've recovered names. Just 5 names. Barely enough to build a memory round, unless you had the right tool. I stole something from the future. Call it an identity reconstruction algorithm, a decryption key for the truth. Feed enough context and it can reverse the redaction, restore what they tried to delete. But I couldn't risk using myself. Too exposed. I'm sending it to you. As for the names, I can't transmit them over this channel, otherwise the government AI bots will pick up on it.
Another dead drop?
The coordinates are embedded. It's underground, hidden. No one would ever look there. Retrieve the deletion log. With the algorithm I sent you, you'll be able to decode it. Hurry, Vijila. If the tool falls into the wrong hand...
They've erased our history. They're trying to erase us. But not on my watch. I have one chance to recover the truth. Looks like I have another mission. Stay tuned. Let's go, heroes. Archivist Omega embedded the drop location in corrupted metadata, hidden in the timestamp of a TIFF file from a 2009 archive. No one but her would think to look there, but now it's guiding me. They're tracing the signal. I've got to shake them, otherwise I'll lead them straight to the drop. They're locking on! Omega, I need your help.
Deploy signal bleed. Route through subgrid 12. It'll confuse their predictive pathing.
Nice trick, Omega. You still got it. You've got to be kidding me. Alright, heroes, we made it to the drop site. Now we gotta recover the drop. Let's go. Well, how are we gonna get it out of there? Could use this. Well, Archivist Omega taught me this. It's the old light on the selfie stick trick. here we go. This is it. Let's get out of here before the drones catch us. All right, time to see what they didn't want us to find. They hit the public record hard. Even the backups are corrupted. Wait. The file. It's being redacted in real time. That confirms it. Real-time AI censorship designed to erase visibility. Time to use Archivist Omega's tool from the future. Welcome back, Alan Hart. Let's see what we can learn about you. Alan Hart was a physician, a radiologist, researcher, writer, and novelist. Born in 1890, died in 1962. Figured out how to use X-ray photography in tuberculosis detection, and for the last 16 years of his life, he headed mass X-ray programs that screened for tuberculosis in Connecticut. This guy saved a lot of lives. And look here, in 1917, he became one of the first trans men in the United States to undergo a hysterectomy. So this file identifies him as a trans man. Let's find out what else we can find. His parents and grandparents largely accepted and supported his gender expression, though his mother described his desire to be a boy as foolish. Well, that's early support, about what you could expect in the 1800s. During school years, Hart was allowed to write essays under his chosen name, Robert Allen Bamford Jr., with little resistance from classmates or teachers. Well, that lines up with modern trans narratives, where many times people are realizing their identity during the school years. Upon reaching adulthood, Hart sought psychiatric counseling and surgery to continue passing as a man. Hart was the first documented transgender male transition in the United States, though sex reassignment surgeries had been carried out earlier in Germany. He requested surgery to eliminate menstruation and the possibility of ever becoming pregnant. The doctor he went to said that he was extremely intelligent and not mentally ill, but afflicted with a mysterious disorder for which the doctor had no explanation. In 1918, he married his first wife, and in an interview with a local paper, Hart declared that he was happier since I had made this change than I have ever been in my life, and I will continue this way as long as I live. I've never concealed anything regarding my change to men's clothing. I came home to show my friends that I am ashamed of nothing. Wow. So this is a wonderful case of visibility in the early 1900s. This totally blows out of the water any argument that trans experience was a recent invention. But let's go back farther. Wewa, a Zuni Native American Ihimana from New Mexico, was a notable weaver and potter. The most famous on record, Wewa served as cultural ambassador for the Native Americans in general, and the Zuni in particular, serving as a contact point and educator for many European American settlers, teachers, soldiers, missionaries, and anthropologists. In traditional Zuni culture, the Imana are male-bodied people who take on the social and ceremonial roles usually performed by women in their culture, at least some of the time. Wewa falls under the Two-Spirit umbrella, but this article talks about the much more specific terms that they used at the time. Strong character made his word law among both men and women with whom he's associated. Though his wrath was dreaded by men as well as women, he was loved by all children, to whom he was ever kind. Wewa lived for part of his life in the role and dress usually associated with men in Zuni culture, and part of her life in roles associated with women, then again in roles and dress associated with men. In Zuni culture, the Ihimana dressed as men or women depending upon how they were feeling at the time. This is very similar to the concept of gender fluid today. But Wewa was born around 1849 and died in 1896. So the fact that we have a person who was dressing according to multiple gender norms, and this was accepted by their peers, means that even in the mid to late 1800s, this was an accepted cultural practice, which was later erased by colonialism. Well, it says here that Wewa visited Washington, D.C., and participated in a tea party with Washington ladies. They even met President Grover Cleveland in 1886. She drew special attention from the United States government and press because most Americans believed Wewa to be a woman, and it was unusual for the United States to receive a female Native American delegate. So Wewa visited Washington, D.C., and made such an impression that they were able to visit with the President of the United States as a delegate of the Native American tribes. This is amazing. Wewa, welcome back. Let's see who this third identity is. Albert Cashier, born 1843, died 1915, was an Irish-born American soldier who served in the Union Army during the American Civil War. Wow. Cashier adopted the identity of a man before enlisting. One argument might be that Cashier only transitioned to a male identity in order to serve in the military, because females were not allowed in the military at the time. But this says he maintained that identity until his death. Cashier became famous as one of at least 250 soldiers who were assigned female at birth and enlisted as men to fight in the Civil War. 250? I did not know that. The consistent and lifelong, at least 53 years, commitment to the male identity prompted historians to believe that Cashier was a trans man. It says that Cashier easily passed the medical examination because it consisted of showing one's hands and feet. During the Civil War, many soldiers were young boys. Albert could not read or write and instead marked an X on the enlistment papers. Fellow soldiers recalled that Cashier was reserved and preferred not to share a tent. I understand why. After the war, Cashier returned to Illinois for a time and continued to live as a man. So I can hear our detractors say, well, he only lived as a man to keep up the pretense. Let's see what we can find, though. In 1911, Cashier was hit by a senator's car, resulting in a broken leg. A physician found out Cashier's secret in the hospital, but did not disclose the information. Well, this is really interesting. Cashier lived there until an obvious deterioration of the mind began to take place and was subsequently moved to Watertown State Hospital for the insane. Attendants discovered Cashier's sex, at which point Cashier was made to wear women's clothes again after presumably more than 50 years of dressing as male. In 1914, Cashier was investigated for fraud by the Veterans Pension Board. Former comrades confirmed that Cashier was in fact the person who fought the Civil War, and the board decided that the pensions payments should continue for life. This is another example of policies by the government affecting trans folks. Welcome back, Albert. Let's go back further. What's this next file? Decrypting now. Chevalier Dean, born 1728, died 1810. Chevalier Dean was a French diplomat, spy, and soldier, fought in the 7 Years' War and spied for France while in Russia and England. Dean had androgynous physical characteristics and natural abilities as a mimic and a spy. Dein appeared publicly as a man and pursued masculine occupations for 49 years, although during that time, Dein successfully infiltrated the court of Empress Elizabeth of Russia by presenting as a woman. Okay, so this could be a case of someone who was just androgynous and really good at spycraft. But let's see what we can find out as far as their true identity. Starting in 1777, Dein lived as a woman and was officially recognized as a woman by King Louis XVI. Wow, life as a woman. Despite the fact that Dein habitually wore a dragoon's uniform, rumors circulated in London that Dein was actually a woman. A betting pool was started on the London Stock Exchange about Dein's true gender. Wow, can you imagine the London Stock Exchange betting about your gender? Dein was invited to join but declined, saying an examination would be dishonoring, whatever the result. The Chevalier Dein claimed to have been assigned female at birth and demanded recognition by the government as such. Dan claimed to have been raised as a boy because Louis Dean de Beaumont could only inherit from his in-laws if he had a son. King Louis XVI and his court complied with this demand, but required in turn that Dan dress appropriately in women's clothing, although Dan was allowed to continue to wear the insignia of the Order of St. Louis. When the king's offer included funds for a new wardrobe of women's clothes, Dan agreed. The King of England bought her new clothes. Welcome back, Chevalier. One more file here. Eleanor de Cespedes, born 1545, died 1588, was a surgeon and a soldier. They were assumed to be a girl at birth and initially married a man, but Cespedes later adopted a male identity and served as a soldier during the Second Rebellion of the Alpujarras, eventually becoming a surgeon in peacetime and marrying a woman. So, married a man, but later transitioned and adopted a male identity and served in the military, marrying a woman. Says here, Cespedes' sex was subject to dispute as a potentially intersex individual, leading to a trial by the Spanish Inquisition on charges of sodomy, witchcraft, transvestism, and bigamy. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition. Cespedes was acquitted of the more serious charges, but was sentenced to 10 years of confinement for bigamy, which was commuted to service in a public hospital in acknowledgement of the value of his special medical skills. During the trial, inquisitorial scribes inconsistently used both masculine and feminine pronouns to refer to Cespedes, while in his own testimony, he consistently described himself with masculine terms. And it says there is controversy over his sex and gender, which understandably this was the 16th century and they didn't have the terms that we have today or the medical knowledge. While there were surgeons before him, Cespedes may have been one of the first assigned female at birth surgeons in Spain or all of Europe. Visibility isn't just about being seen, it's about being real. It's about how we resist being rewritten, how we anchor ourselves in a world trying to erase us. When our stories are visible, they can't be denied. When our names are remembered, we can't be replaced. That's why they censor us. That's why they hide us. And that is why we fight back. That's why Transgender Day of Visibility, today, March 31st, is so important. They thought if they buried our stories deep enough, no one would remember. If they erased our names, redacted our records, shredded the truth, we would disappear, but we didn't. We were always here, fighting, creating, healing, loving, and now we remember. These 5 were just the beginning. Their lives weren't anomalies, they were signals. Signals from the past. Proof that we were never new, just erased. We are part of history, and we're not going anywhere. They tried to erase us. We refuse. If you've made it this far, you're part of the resistance. Like, share, and subscribe. Keep the signal alive. Vijila, out.